you're the one. You're the one. You're the one. 'Cause you're the one. You're the one. You're the one. You're the chosen one. You're the one. You're the one. You're the one. You're the chosen one. Greetings, chosen. I've been waiting here for you since the beginning of this universe. You know the world is fading. There's a secret power hidden in your soul. Don't be afraid to use it. There are voices in your head saying that you're a failure. Move it. You're not good enough, but you know that's not true. There is a secret power hidden in your soul. Don't be afraid to use it, 'cause you're the one. 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 'Cause you're the one. You're the one. You're the one. You're the chosen one. You're the one. You're the one.
The first time I met this guy, it was at a Texas Libertarian Party event where he gave an amazing speech that was definitely the best thing that happened that day.
From Dallas, Texas, this is Anarchast.
Greetings, savages. Welcome back to Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I will be Patrick Smith, and today we have a special guest, Vin Armani, co-founder of CounterMarkets, instructor at Bitcoin Mystery School, author of Tao of the Gigolo, author of Self-Ownership, the Foundation of Property and Morality, and the author of Render Unto Caesar, Prophecy, Profit, and Proof of Work in the Dim Age. There, let's actually get the correct square up. Sorry about that. And Crypto Savage, welcome to the show, Vin. It is cool to talk to you.
Oh man, it is so good to see you. Yeah, that was a great event. Actually, I really enjoyed it. There were not a ton of people there, but the venue was awesome. And you definitely made an impression, to say the least. So it's good to speak with you.
I have to ask, what kind of impression? Be honest. Like insane? Like what's this guy doing here? What?
No, I thought it was perfect. I was like, this, well, because you were doing the no one for governor thing, and I was like, yeah, this guy he's speaking my language, and obviously the style, the charisma, I was like, okay, this is somebody to pay attention to, and so I was smiling through your whole presentation. So no, it's great, and it's absolutely no surprise. You're filling some pretty big shoes, but I think it's absolutely perfect. I think you're the right guy for this job. So dude, it's great to be talking with you again.
Dude, I'm excited. And I should mention that this is pretty much the 1-year anniversary of Jeff handing the reins over to me. And I think you're a great guest to be that 1-year anniversary guest. So I'm excited. And guys, again, I always say this, anytime I see the guest like enjoying the music before the show starts, I know it's going to be a good show. So I saw that happening. Man, I have watched you mainly on Twitter and through some YouTube videos, just hearing about the lifestyle that you're leading and the things that you're worried about and the way that you have, unlike most people, rather than just bitch about what you see coming or worry about what you see coming, you took serious life-changing action and you live in Saipan now. Is that correct? Where is it?
That's right. That's right.
That
Saipan.
is a bold move. Can you talk about what makes you the type of person that would move uproot everything and take those steps? Unlike I guess the question is, what's different about you from most people that gets you actually to take action?
That's a pretty good question, and I don't know if I'm inside of it, so I've always been this type of person. I think of myself sometimes as a little bit of a procrastinator, but I guess I'm not. But I've also chosen to live my life and surround myself for many years with the type of people who also want to take action. And so I think part of it is I lead a really simple life. In terms of what I eat, how I live, I'm not really big on conspicuous consumption. I've never gotten myself into any kind of debt. I've tried to not lock myself down in a situation where I couldn't move if I needed to. At least up until now, I think I may have found kind of the place. I've been telling people this is my forever home, and now I've said this before. I sort of said this with Los Angeles before things happened, and I wound up on a TV show that put me in Vegas. And then with Vegas, I said, I'll never leave Vegas, and I moved to New Hampshire, and I knew I would be leaving New Hampshire after the first winter, and my wife couldn't take it. But I found this place, and especially with the time and seeing what's ahead, I've had for many years this idea, and I actually did a long video series called The Ascendant Project. It's on YouTube back in 2016. That is specifically me talking about there is a shift coming. This is the nature of the shift that's going to come. I don't know what the specifics are about to be, but it's about to be massive, and it's about to be something. And people are rediscovering that series now and being like, whoa, dude, what the hell? So, I've been living my life that was my truth. And that's how it always is. It's not a gimmick. It's not a brand. Like, if I'm talking to somebody about something and I'm expressing myself in some way, I'm expressing it because I'm actually living that. Like, if I wasn't willing to live that and willing to do exactly what I'm telling you to do, then I won't tell you to do it. And so I think that's just where I'm at, is that I've just been in a position where I've been able to live in my truth, and I've been able to live my truth. And part of that was I saw this thing coming. It represented things I had been waiting for years. It checked off all the boxes. And so, since April, basically, I just looked, and there was a tweet from March 1st of last year where I had said, okay, this is big. It's not about this virus. It's about the cultural things that are going to come. There's a cultural event happening. Again, it was checking off all the boxes. And so beginning of April, first week of April, packed up my family, jumped on a plane flight. It was the last flight before they shut this island down. It's now reopened. And that was it. This is home now. I have no plans on coming back to the mainland. I absolutely do not see things getting any better. I see things getting much, much worse than people even really can even fathom right now. So I'm here, and that's the story of how I wound up here, I guess.
I talked to 2 days ago. I talked to somebody that's helping people get residencies in other countries, but this is a territory of the U.S. that you're in, so there was no immigration issues or anything like that, right?
No, you can actually come here. There's a couple of guys, two brothers from California, who came here recently, and they just came here with driver's licenses without even the real ID or anything on it. So, it's far away from the U.S. I mean, we're on Australian time zones here. Mm. It's near Guam, so it's in the same island chain as Guam. If people are familiar with that, especially military people will be, Marines and Navy will be familiar with Guam, of course. But it's it's a 4-hour flight to Tokyo. It's a 4-hour flight to Seoul. So that gives you some idea of where we're at. We're basically in Asia for the most part.
Back in March, I remember it very well because I just started paying attention when the coronavirus news when coronavirus had not hit the U.S. soil yet. And and I think we started paying close attention early on because of my daughter's situation. She was immunocompromised at the time from her leukemia. So if there was, putting myself back in that February, March headspace, if it turned out to be this super deadly pandemic, then we were under real threat. And so, like yourself, I'm the type of person that tries to, run the cost benefit, run the risk analysis, and then actually take action based on that. And so we did. Because they were saying that, it has this incubation period of 2 weeks where you're asymptomatic or whatever, we're like, well, by the time anybody has it here, it would have already been, 2 weeks too late for our daughter, right? So we locked down our family back in like late February, early March. And I mean, actual lockdown. Like we didn't leave the house if we didn't have to. We sanitized like food and stuff that came into the house over that period of time. We checked all of our preps and everything. And then, and it was against the recommendations of our doctors at the time. This was before it was crazy. They're like, oh no, you don't need to do all that. That's overkill. And then by the end of that time, when we were seeing like the real world data come in, that it didn't look all that threatening and it wasn't the apocalypse, our doctors were freaking out and they're like, you gotta lock down and all stuff. And we were like, no. Not really seeing that, guys. And so we opened our own lives back up. We thought for ourselves, made our own decisions, led our own lives. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of this whole thing. And I was constantly telling people, look, you got to think for yourself. Look at the advice of your doctors and then make your own decisions, because the only person that can make the decision is you. Even if you trust a doctor, that's still your decision to make, to put that trust in them and to do what they say. So anyway, that's all to say. Very early on, we were trying to make rational decisions around this. And back then I was predicting.
Well, I will tell you, that echoes. So there's a pattern there. That's interesting that you say that, because probably starting in January, when I saw this thing happening in China, I started stocking up the house.
Yeah.
I got the preps ready. I ordered masks. I had masks and all of this. And what was so interesting was that by the time everybody was going out and getting stuff, hand sanitizer I had, cleaning supplies I had, everything was at masks. So I was the person, when everybody started freaking out, I was sending masks to my family members who were immunocompromised because they couldn't find them in the stores. I was sending them packs of masks because and it was easy. When I went to go and buy them, it was no problem. I could buy them in bulk, right? I had all of this. And then when people were asking me, well, because I told them, I stocked up, and I started telling them in January, I'm stocking up for this coronavirus thing, man. I'm stocking up. And so then, of course, they started calling me, oh, well, what did you stock up with? What did you stock up with? And I started sending them Amazon links. And they were just sending back to me, it's sold out, 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 everything. And so, same sort of situation. I started out, I was prepared. But I think part of it was being prepared from the beginning gave me the headspace to not have to react and panic. I could really sit back and look, and it sounds like very similar to yourself. You could sit back and look from a comfortable, objective as possible, right? There's always subjectivity, but as objective as possible because you had taken the steps. And so it was, I tweeted out when we landed basically here, I said I traveled to the end of the empire to watch the end of the empire. And I think that part of the thing now, a lot of people who had not heard of me before or who were not following me from a libertarian side have started following me since this has happened, because I've just gone down the list and said, this is about to happen, this is about to happen, this is about to happen. And what people don't realize is, again, it's like you can't see it when you're inside it. And I think that that's the same thing that your experience. So people should hear they should hear a pattern. And the pattern is, don't get yourself into a situation where you have to react. Start looking around you so that you can be proactive, so that you don't have to react to the world as it's coming. Prepare yourself, do what you need to do. Even if even if you overact, then you don't have to overreact. It's better to have been prepared in that situation, right? Of course, you don't want to fetishize your preparedness, and it sounds like you didn't, and that's a good pattern, is that, you don't get the cognitive dissonance and the confirmation bias of saying, oh, well, we locked down, so now we can't change that pattern with more information. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, we got ourselves safe. We're here. We're in a safe situation. Okay, let's reassess the situation and move forward. And I think that's the answer to your question. It's like, who are the people who act? Well, the people who act are the people who, as they say, and I love, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. That's it. So the people who act are the people who stay ready. You stay ready. And I think, I'm an entrepreneur. That's how I make my living. I've been working for myself for, decades. And again, as an entrepreneur, you stay ready because you don't know when the opportunity is going to come. And do you have everything in place that you need to be able to capitalize on this opportunity? And that's something that mindset is very much lost with most people, because we don't have to make those preparations like our ancestors did. We don't have to prepare for winter coming, and can our goods or dry out the food or make sure the silos are filled. And we don't have to do that for the most part. It's like, oh, I don't have something. My refrigerator's empty. I'll just go to the store. So we're just in a very reactive situation, a very reactive society. And unfortunately, when you get to that, the logical progression is exactly what we're seeing on the ground now. It doesn't just permeate into your food and your electricity and these sorts of things. It permeates through everything. And then here comes a virus. And again, you weren't prepared. You weren't ready for there to be a pandemic, for there to be an epidemic. But our ancestors knew that epidemics were just part of life. Plagues happen. Are we ready for a plague? And whole communities, whole societies, and certainly individual families would get themselves in a situation where if a plague comes along, here's how we handle it. Here's what we do because it's a part of society. And we've lost that. So we got one that wasn't even a bad plague, and we way overreacted.
It was like a test plague. It was a test plague. It's like a beta plague.
Yeah. Well, it was a plague on the order of something that, had this happened 100 years ago, it wouldn't even be in the history books. Because it's just that what we've reached is that we're tracking everything, right? We've got all this data, all this modeling, we're tracking everything, and then we've got this global information network, and so we're reporting on things and making these predictions and this modeling, and there's this whole industry of making this modeling to where, it's about what happens in the model. It's not about what happens in the real world. Our ancestors didn't have those models. So until they started seeing people dropping dead in the streets, it's not a plague. And, while they showed us the people dropping dead on the streets in China, and I think anybody with who's thinking now and seeing what's going on is like, well, that was a psyop. Clearly, that was a psyop against the U.S. by Chinese intelligence agencies, because
that was pretty successful, I might add.
Super successful. Nary a one person has dropped dead in the streets from coronavirus. And you know how I'm able to say that with authority is because we've got cameras everywhere. Yeah. And if somebody had dropped dead from coronavirus, the Karens wouldn't let us live it down. Okay? Never. It would be the top news for the entire year. So because you haven't seen it, it hasn't happened. And so that's why I say to our ancestors, this would have been like absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. Old people died. Now that's okay. Got it. Not great. Not what you want. My father passed away in February after a infection, after he had a heart procedure. Then he left the hospital, came back, and he was in Connecticut, right? So very close to New York. Nobody was talking coronavirus at the time, right? But it very well could have been that that's what took him out. Now that's terrible. But my father was sick. Now, you did the right thing in terms of what we don't want to see is we don't want to see immunocompromised young people having issues. And so, of course, then what do we need to do? We need to protect those populations, clearly. But parents of immunocompromised individuals are aware of that if they're good parents, and they're protecting regardless, and they've got their spidey sense on and out there and looking clearly like you do. And so it's giving support to those individuals. We should be doing that. But
and you know what we didn't do?
Falling into a psyop. Go ahead.
What we didn't do is go to my entire neighborhood and go to the HOA and demand rules be put on everybody that lived in my neighborhood that they have to lock themselves down too for the safety of my daughter. That would have been absurd. That would have been borderline immoral to try and well, no, it would have absolutely been immoral to force people to lock down for her sake. It was on us to protect ourselves on our property. And I think that is the microcosm lesson for what then unfolded in the world afterwards. We have an amazing group of activists here in Dallas that are just really smart people, and they very early on started the hashtag "Too Prepared to Care," and I think that is just the perfect attitude. Like, I've been so chill this entire time. Like, for the past 10 years, I've just been doing little prep things here and there, nothing insane. Get a little bit of food, get a water storage, get some fuel storage, just little things. And then, we did the lockdown. And even though the rest of the world wasn't locked down, we were totally chill during our little 1 month of personal lockdown. And then we had the rolling blackouts in Dallas and Texas recently. And so massive amounts of people were out of electricity for 4 days. We had a generator running in the backyard 4 days straight. We had the fuel to run it. We were the only house in the neighborhood with lights on. My fiber internet still worked because it doesn't depend on power. So I'm live streaming, living life as normal, and I felt like a king, man. Like, when you're prepping, I think you feel a little bit, maybe insane's maybe too strong of a word, but you feel like you're maybe wasting your resources. But I'll tell you what, when it actually happens and you need those preps, you feel like a king. You feel like the smartest guy in the neighborhood. Too prepared to care.
Well, this is the story of Noah. I mean, it's like our ancestors have been telling this story forever to try to teach us something. So Noah is a lunatic building a boat in the middle of the desert, and he's like, "Oh, there's going to be a flood." He's a lunatic. He's a lunatic until the flood comes. And you see, there's a reason why stories like this stick around for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. And you know what? When Noah was done, he was the king.
Yeah, he was the smartest guy.
Point.
Alive. He was the smartest guy alive.
His family went on to become the kings. He was the patriarch of all the tribes. That's the story. Yeah. Right? So the story is, get yourself ready. And if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. And see, you stayed ready. So this is the most important thing, but it's not just about staying ready with the preps, right? That's important, the physical preparation. But it's also about staying ready with the mental, emotional, and spiritual preparation. So it's like the people who, see, it's too late to start a contemplative practice of meditation or prayer or relaxation or exercise and fitness. Like, you see, it's too late to do that when the crisis hits, because you've got to deal with the crisis. Nobody can move who doesn't have that emotional stability can move through the crisis and develop the emotional stability. So it's like, no, when times are good, that's when you go and you develop a practice of meditation. When times are good, that's when you go and you develop your practice of prayer. That's when you do these things, because you need them in the crisis. In the same way that, well, why did you get the generator when you've got the electricity, right? But no. See, it's for the crisis, and so it's a greater story. It's a greater story, and you look at I mean, I see the people online, right? I see them, and I see people who I knew who were like, yeah, they had their fitness together and all of this, and they were happy and healthy and all of but then you realize that it was all dependent upon their ability, for instance, to get into the gym every day. And some of those people, now you hear about them killing themselves, right? And so it's like they didn't think, well, what's the broader picture here? What if I don't have the gym? Is this part of my identity, or do I have something broader? Like, where am I with my principles? Where am I at? And the time to think about that is when times are good. The time to think about that is not when the crisis hits. And so it's the same story. The same story is get yourself together emotionally. Get yourself together mentally. Get your family situation straight when times are good, right? Because it's getting those things straight that is going to help you get through the crisis. And if this particular crisis, which has been one that's, social distancing is the real virus. People are like, oh, how to deal with loneliness in the time of social distancing. And it's like, wait, social distancing equals loneliness. Are you not listening to the words that you just said? Loneliness is literally social distance. You feel distance from other people socially, and that makes you lonely. How did you think for a second that you were going to practice social distancing and not get lonely? You're practicing loneliness and thinking that you're not going to feel lonely. But that's because they're not here. They don't have the mental and emotional preps. They don't know where they're at in their heart with their principles, and then they're not willing to live for those principles. And so I think this is a place where I think not everybody in the libertarian community, but enough people in the libertarian community, maybe a critical mass of people in the libertarian community, have at least been thinking about these things for years. So it's up to us, I think, now to take it the next level deeper, because it's been taken the next level deeper on us. Okay? Like, it's been taken beyond the state on us. It's been taken into culture. It's been taken into the psychological, the spiritual. We need to be ready to move to that next level as well.
Okay, I have zero of what you're calling mental preps, so this might be a good conversation, like, practically for me. I don't know most of the things you just talked about, so maybe you can walk me through, like, give me the basic package of mental preps that I need to start looking into.
So I think that the very, very first thing is, so first what I'm going to say is, I'm going to speak from my experience of sort of across my life. I have had various experiences that have taught me little pieces of what I now have that I'm still growing in. And it's like, what I'm realizing over time is that there's no limit to how far this can go. And what I'm also realizing is that there are a lot of traditions of these practices that are out there in every culture. So every culture has an arc, in a way, of tradition of these cultures. Now, whether that's a tradition of prayer, whether that's a tradition of meditation, whether that's, a contemplative tradition, whether that's a psychedelic tradition and plant medicine, shamanism, whatever it is, all of these are to get us there. It's to get us into these mental and spiritual preps so that we can, it's utilitarian for us to deal with it. So I think the very first thing, it's hard for a lot of people. Some people are not just, they're not mystically minded in the first place, right? So they don't want to deal with the woo-woo. And while I'm a mystic by nature, I'm also a very skeptical mystic. So I'm the type of person who...
Yeah, I'm not the woo guy, which has been wild. Like, having been handed the Anarchast channel, which has a lot of people that would normally be called woo, and I'm not trying to disparage anybody. This has been a wild, like, roller coaster for me. I'm expanding on all fronts, and I'm hoping the audience is patient with me while I, look into this stuff. But I am, like you say, I'm a skeptical guy. I reject most things that I don't see evidence for, and so I'm, like, pretty resistant, and I'm, like, baby stepping it, into certain areas, and so I think I'm the person you're talking about. Go ahead.
Yeah, I am... So when I say a mystic, what I'm talking about is I'm somebody who believes that there is a broader, subtle reality that's going on that is, let's say, not fully understood, but that we can tap into. And I think that this is even if you're a big materialist, we don't have to go into like the religious or kind of spiritual aspect of this, but it's just like, I think this is something that probably every great athlete or anybody who's even been in athletics can relate to, is that when you're in the zone, there's something going on there. There's something more than just some mental thing that we could talk about that's psychological. You're really in an altered state of consciousness. Or anybody who's, plant medicine, if they smoke weed or whatever, like some of those insights that are coming to you, there's something real there. And so I'm somebody who has been exploring that sort of aspect of the mystery for a lot of my life. But what I don't really have time for, and I know that there are probably some people in the audience who are this is gonna like hit them and they're gonna be like, oh, that's me. What I don't really have time for is like what I would call speculative spirituality, and a lot of that is what the woo is about. So it's like well, there are these like angels and then there's this cosmic thing and it's this and that. And like, I don't have time for that. What I have time for if somebody is like, hey, here's this practice, do this practice, you will have this result. Right. And so that has been true for me in fitness. That has been true for me I became basically one of the most famous pickup artists in the world. I was on, I was a male escort for years. I was on a TV show called Gigolos. People could watch me do my thing. And to a lot of people, that seemed like magic. Right. But it was like, here's a practice. And it was a practice that I learned from other men who were good at it. And then also honed in my own style, and what works, and what doesn't, I threw it out. And to some people, they're like, that's magic. How could you possibly do that? How could you just walk into a bar and pick a woman up like that? That seems crazy. And yes, there are little things going on, and there's some mystical kind of aspects of it, but I'm a skeptical mystic. I'm not just going to believe something because it sounds nice and put a little thing on my wall and go namaste and do all of that. That's not me. That's not the type of person that I am. So I'm very much about like, let me do spiritual practices that have some utility. And so what I will say, you will be led, if you're willing to go down the rabbit hole, you will be led on this front. And I would say for the people who are the most materialist, that the first thing that you could do is just simply set aside time in the day for contemplation. That's the simplest thing. Like, don't have to go into some sort of poses and do some specific mudras and mantras and all of that. It's like literally wake up before the sun comes up. So I'm usually up at 5:30, sometimes 4:30, right? And that's when I begin my practice. Wake up before the sun comes up sometime and have your practice sometime between that when it's dark and when it's light. I like to start when it's dark and it goes into light. Start planning that out and literally just go and sit. And begin thinking about your day, the things that are going to come up. And before anything, don't check your phone. Don't do anything like that. If you want, maybe get some black coffee or some black tea or some green tea. No calories, right? Stay fasted. That's also important. And you see that in every tradition. So stay fasted during that period. You're on the end of your fast of sleep. Your body is in a very clean state. If you want to add in a little bit of caffeine to help you wake up, if you got that, that's fine. That doesn't add calories. It's actually good for it. And just sit and think about your day and just see what thoughts come up. At the very, very least, it's going to help you organize your day. That's the moment at which things that you otherwise might not think about because there's a lot of noise, you're in a high signal moment at that point. Very high signal moment. So even somebody who's not woo-woo, you can hear what I just said and be like, oh, of course, that makes sense. That's a good practice.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Doable.
Feel the feelings that feel the feelings that you're going to feel, do whatever and think about it and be there. Now, then what's going to happen over time? Dedicate yourself to doing it. You're going to see that your life changes. It changes in small and subtle but powerful ways that will be very noticeable. And then what's going to happen is you're going to want to know more about how to do this contemplation. You're going to continue your practice. And you're going to want to know more about how to do this contemplation, right? And then invariably, you're going to want to go deeper and deeper because your life is getting better and better. And what ends up happening is you end up with prayer. You go from that and you go all the way to basically having a belief in God. And that's exactly what happened for me. And the reason that is, if you think about it, even in materialist terms, its ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. So in other words, the evolution of the individual recapitulates or sort of mirrors the evolution of the species. That's the reason why, like, from a fetus, or from a zygote to a fetus, there's a point in that evolution where a human being, a fish, and a rabbit all look the same. You can't tell the difference. And then later on, when they're still gestating, they start to break away from each other, right? And the pig and the human being look like each other for longer. They break away from the fish. And what is that? That's our evolutionary history playing out in our individual evolutionary history, okay? So spiritual traditions evolved. And you have to know that what they must have evolved from is one of our ancestors, or many of our ancestors, simply waking up, sitting down, and thinking, and just seeing what happens. And then figuring out, oh, I thought about something, and I was able to catch fish better. Let me go think some more. Yeah. Okay, wow, and now I can make a house. Let me go think some more. Oh, remember those sparks? What was that? Oh, yeah, there were those sparks, and then they hit something, and it started a fire. I bet I could make those sparks. And then it's just like, as it goes and goes and goes, you want to get better at making that connection with whatever that contemplative practice is. And so what you wind up with is Orthodox Christian monks in the caves in Mount Athos by themselves, fasted, exactly like you do in the morning, praying, thinking about things, and having revelations. You end up with Jesus 40 days in the desert fasting. Where does this come from? That's it. It's not woo-woo. It's a technology. And you can get there. Everybody can get there themselves. Even from a materialist standpoint, start with just thinking. Be skeptical. Be totally skeptical of everything that I've said, but just do the practice. Do it for a month. Do it for a month every day.
Okay, what
See if
specifically?
your life doesn't change.
How long do I think for, and what do I think about? Like, how does this work in practice? Get me started.
As long as you can. As long as you can, that is comfortable. Because initially, it's not going to be comfortable, right? But it's about attention. And it's about giving attention to this period of time. You're setting aside time. And you're setting aside, the other thing you should do is you should set aside a space. So I would suggest that that's not a space in your home. It could be a space near your home, but you should set aside the space for you that you're going to go to every day, right? And so think about this. Play it out, right? You set aside a time, and you set aside a space that you're going to go to every morning. Now, something's going to happen with you going to this space every morning. Well, you know you're going to be there mornings in the future, so you're going to start to make it more and more comfortable. And then you're going to want to make this, either find a space, or then once you find it, make it more conducive to your contemplation. Okay? More and more. Well, what do you have? You've got a temple. You just created a temple. It's a sacred space that is set aside that you go to for the sole purpose of having that experience, and you go in the morning. It's a church. So if you look at the pattern of a church, what is it? It's our ancestors going to a place that is set aside, that is specific for this. That's what sacred means. Set aside. That is specific for this contemplative practice. And over the eons and eons, what do you develop? You develop what are the patterns that make it easier for me to make this connection? How do I sit? What's around me? What do I see? What imagery? Right? These are all emergent properties. And so what I'm suggesting is like, and this is what has worked for me, and it's the reason why I know these things to the core of my being. So I call myself an atheist, but I pray every day, right? So it's like, people are like, well, I don't understand. Why do you call yourself an atheist? Well, because a theist is someone who believes in God, right? Believes in God.
Okay, who do you pray to?
Believes that God exists. Well, no. Here's the thing. Do I believe that you exist? Do I believe that Patrick exists?
I hope so.
That would be, that's not the appropriate word.
Okay.
That's not the appropriate word. That's not the appropriate idea. I don't believe that you exist. I'm not acting like I believe that you exist. I know that you exist. I'm talking to you. A theist is someone who isn't talking to God because they have to believe.
Okay.
It's not a matter of belief. It's a matter of know. It's a matter of have the conversation. And so what I'm saying is, what is the path where you could be an atheist the whole time? That's what I'm saying. I'm a mystical skeptic. If there's nothing there, I'm not going to believe it. I'm going to have an experience that, to my core, I know that something just happened. I know that I just spoke with somebody. Right?
Okay.
I've done like 15 ayahuasca ceremonies. There's no question. If you do ayahuasca with a real shaman, all of this, and you really do it, there's no question that something just happened. And there's no question about what the nature and the quality of what just happened was.
Well, how would you know
It's
that?
not like, maybe that was inside.
The nature, you're laughing, but come on now, this is a rational question. How would you know that something happened? Because the nature of what you're taking necessarily alters your perceptions. So you can't verify it anymore. There's no null hypothesis anymore. You can't know, you can't prove that something happened. It could just be hallucinations.
It could just be hallucinations, right? It could. So I'll give you the first answer, and the first answer is the quality of the experience that you have is independent of culture. So what you see and what you experience, even people who are not told beforehand of what the experience they should expect, have the same experience. And whether or not they are, like, let's say, Americans or whatever, or they're a Shipibo Indian out of the jungle, they have the exact same experience. You talk to the same spirit. She
Really?
she has the same quality to, yes, she has the same quality to her. Everybody experiences her the same way. All of this. Yes,
Couldn't that just be because the drug
tradition.
causes the same type of hallucination?
It could be, but see, that's if you want to have that type of sophistry, like you can't live in that world.
I'm just
right?
asking.
So
I'm
it's like,
just asking
couldn't
questions. So I
Yes.
hope you're okay with this. I'm having
Sure,
a good
but-
time.
No, I am, and it's a good
Okay.
question, but it's like, it's the same question as how do we know we're not a brain in a jar? And the answer to that is we don't. Like, how do we know that we're not in the Matrix, a la the movie, right? And we're just in a pod, and that this is just a consensual hallucination being given to us by a machine? We don't. You know, Elon Musk is like, oh, we're probably in a simulation. Okay, maybe we are. But what I would say is it may be true, but it's perhaps the most irrelevant question to possibly ask.
Absolutely agree.
Because
Solipsism is a dead end.
Yes. It's dead. I have to behave as though something is real. I must.
Yeah.
I must. And you know, like in my book, Self-Ownership, the first, everything is from first principles for me, as you could probably tell from the way that I describe the way that you should do things. Like, and the first principle is we must behave as though pain is real. Whether or not pain is actually real, how do I know that it's not just a hallucination of pain? Like, it doesn't matter. I must behave as though pain is real. I must behave that way, and we all do.
Yeah.
And so we have to have some baseline if we want to live, if we want to continue on with this life. Because otherwise, like, just jump off a building, just shoot yourself in the head. If it's not real, how do you know it's real? Just then shoot yourself in the head. Like, anybody who says that to me, I'm like, you're sitting here, you're alive, you ate. You obviously have been eating for your entire life. You're not starved to death. How do you know that hunger is actually real? How do you know that food is actually sustenance? How do you know that you need to breathe? Like, how do you know that feeling in your lungs, if you go, and you hold your breath, how do you know that's real? How do you know that's not a hallucination from a lack of oxygen?
I guess what I'm hearing from you then is that you're saying that these experiences you've had on hallucinogens are as real as anything else that you've experienced. Is that truth? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, sure. As our dreams, right? As our dreams. In the moment, it's not to say that they're not as real. In the moment, even when you're lucid dreaming, right? Even when I know that I'm in a dream, because I lucid dream often. Even when I know that I'm in a dream, that doesn't change the fact that I'm behaving within the dream as though I'm in a thing, some reality, somewhere, right? there's a door. What do? I reach my hand out in the dream and I open the door, right? I still behave as though there is a door there, even though I know that I'm in a dream. Mm-hmm. So this is the same thing with the hallucinogens, is that it's like, but it's not just the hallucinogens, because probably the most powerful experiences I have had, sort of spiritual experiences, it was because I had done hallucinogens that I understood that the quality was like, what I was able to say was, it felt like I was on an acid trip, or it felt like I was on a mushroom trip. And these lasted for days at a time. And so it's when you've had the previous experience and you understand the quality of it, that then you're like, whoa, wait a second. Now what's happening? I'm completely sober and I can't do this to myself. And honestly, I had one experience in 2017 that was like that lasted for 3 days, the strongest that I've ever had. And by day 2, I was very, very worried that I had lost my mind completely. I was very, very worried that maybe I was having a psychotic or schizophrenic break. And then by day 3, it just let itself off. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. And yet it was like I was having a full body high. I was getting a massive mental download. And I said, it's gone. I've lost it. Right? Like and then it just went away. And I was left with this feeling afterwards of like, what the hell just happened? Right? But I could appreciate that it was like, this has the same quality as the psychedelic trips that I've had many, many, many times. And yet it's lasting like this. And this is not an uncommon experience. So this is not for people in the realm of spirituality having one of these moments. You know, it could be Paul in the road to Damascus, right? He had the same sort of thing, and it's always 3 days. Like, I'm sure there's people listening now who have had some sort of experience like this that's very similar. It always is 3 days. Is 3 days.
If you have, say so in the chat. I'll keep an eye out for it. Outlaw Barber asks, question for Patrick. Have you ever taken hallucinogenics? If not, would you be willing to try? The most I've done, and this is recent, is microdosing mushrooms. And so, you know, microdosing, you don't actually feel or experience anything drastic at all. And I wanted, like I said, I'm trying to expand I only live once. So I want to expand myself, and I want to try some things that I haven't tried before. And, you know, we've been going through one of the hardest things a family can go through with a sick kid. And so there's certainly been some depression involved there. And a friend that I trust recommended that I try the microdosing mushrooms. And my personal anecdotal experience is that it definitely helped things during the time when I needed it to. So, I mean, that's anecdotal. That's not scientific. But for me, it worked. So, what more? I mean, even if it's what's the word? Even if it's when you take a sugar
placebo
pill, even if it's a placebo effect, fine. I needed something during that time, and it was there for me, and it did the thing. So,
the placebo effect is real, though.
Yes.
That's and I think that's an interesting. The fact that we're able to say, oh, there's a placebo effect. Okay, well, that needs to be studied a lot more, okay? Because somehow, as a part of the fabric of reality, right? So there is not a single person in the pharmaceutical industry who is going to deny that the placebo effect is real. Okay, well, that means sugar pills can cure, in some percentage of people, sugar pills are going to cure as well as whatever medicine you're giving them, and that's real. So then maybe we need to ask a deeper question, right? If we're really scientists, okay, if we're really rational beings, and we say, well, what is the causal agent for the cure? What is the causal agent for the cure? And if 100% of the time, the cure comes from the real thing and not from the sugar pill, then we say it's the pharmaceutical, right? But if some percentage of the time, the cure comes from the sugar pill, We, if we're rational creatures, have to say, perhaps the causal agent of the cure is not actually in the pharmaceutical. Perhaps the pharmaceutical is enhancing or exacerbating or bringing forward the causal agent of the cure, but perhaps the causal agent of the cure is something totally different. And the numbers say it. And the fact that we say that there's a placebo effect, if we're rational, if we're really exploring, we should say that, which gets to your point about the hallucinogens. And it's my understanding from having been a psychopharmaceutical explorer, having done particularly, I mean, ayahuasca is the big one, right? Like, because this is the one that has, this is the one that is really, when you surrender to it, when you have a good shaman, like I was lucky because my very first shaman was a Shipibo Indian, straight out of the jungle, amazing musician, like just by itself, amazing musician, which adds everything to it, and was coming from this ancient tradition, right? So he was bringing that forward. Mm-hmm. And what you get is that this is not inside of my head. And that people who are not dumb people, and I think that that's the important thing about sitting with a real shaman, is that you realize, holy crap, this dude has dedicated his entire life to this. And he has become a master, a virtuoso of instruments, with his voice, it's a religious ceremony that you're in. It's an ancient religious ceremony that has tied entire peoples of the Amazon together. It's the reason why they stopped and stayed in this very unforgiving environment is because she was there, because the ayahuasca was there. And their stories say that. Their history says that. And you get the reason why when you're in it. And the fact that the combination of these songs plus the chemical, if you will, what you realize is like, no. It's not just the pharmacological agent. The pharmacological agent is the spark, it's the catalyst, but it's not the fuel. The fuel was already there. It was waiting to be lit on fire. And that's what you see. And that the shaman is stoking the fire. And that there's a way, the songs are the bellows, that have been designed to stoke a fire. And he knows how to stoke a fire. Not everybody can stoke a fire. It's a skill that you learn. And so what you see is that, like, perhaps we have been mistaking the spark for the fuel. Perhaps we have been mistaking the spark for the flame itself. That we always had the capability within us for the flame to be lit, and we always had the capability within us to stoke the flame. The word shaman, where shaman actually comes from, is the Siberian. It's actually the Siberian medicine men in the north of Russia, and they don't even use psychedelics. They just use drums only, and I know from your musical taste that you can appreciate that, right? That there is an altered I was, involved in the rave scene from 15 years old. There is an altered state of consciousness that comes from, and particularly the desert rave scene, right? Goa trance and psytrance and all of that. There's an altered state of consciousness if you get the BPMs right, if you get the frequencies right. There's an altered state of consciousness.
I would have never thought to call it an altered state of consciousness, but I've been a drummer since I was in high school, and rhythm has always been very key to my life, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I've just never thought to call it that. There's a flow. Maybe that's the word I would have used. Like, there's a mental flow state where things come easy, things are clearer, there's peace, there's calm, or joy.
Well, aren't you describing microdosing mushrooms?
Maybe. I come from like Republican Texas. Like, this is me, and I'm growing as fast as I can. Okay, thank you for being patient with me. No, I'm loving learning about this stuff. And to answer the dude's question from earlier, yes, I think maybe as of now I'm open to trying, I guess is my question.
Well, it's all about set and setting too, Patrick. Like, and I think for everybody listening, right, this is not something to just jump into. I personally was blessed, like I say, that like there were guys who were older than me that I trusted, that I thought was cool, but I was also young and didn't have a care in the world, who were like, it's a full moon. I know this group. Let's go out. And I was raised in the Southern California desert. So it's like, let's go out into the desert. It's a full moon. We're going to drive for like 2 hours on these dirt roads. And then we're going to show up at this place, and it'll be like unlike anything you've ever experienced in your life. And we show up, and it's Moon Tribe, right? Some of the people who went on to like become part of Burning Man, but really important people in that whole scene. And so it's like being able to be involved in that, having these older, some very old, like old hippies and stuff, like around to create the setting and the mindset to where everything was right, to create the temple. Because that's really, I mean, again, it's like a place set aside that going way out into the desert, and it's not, you wouldn't be here for any other reason but this. And your mind is in that state, you've been preparing, and you go. If you're going to do it, and you're going to do it to move forward, that's what I would say. But it sounds like you're already on the path, and like just starting the practice of contemplation, just that will get you used to being with yourself in the mystical, in the abstract realm, the place that your thoughts come from, and to start to analyze and see like, well, where is this thought coming from? Is this coming from me? Is this coming from somewhere else? Because sometimes you're going to get, I mean, that's inspiration. I mean, and you as a musician know that it's like, and I know that you've had this experience because every musician has. I had it just the other night where there will be a song in your dream. You'll dream and there'll be a song you've never heard before. Maybe it's even got the lyrics and everything. And then you wake up and you grab your drumsticks, right? And you start banging out the beat before you fully wake up, right? And that's so many people, so many musicians have had these sorts of experiences. And then it's like, where is the music? Where does it come from?
Dude, I sound like such a hippie, I guess is the way. This is how I know how to talk in Texas when I'm saying this stuff. But this is true that when I was a little kid, I had this dream about a specific rhythm. And then, I don't know, months, years later, somebody introduced me to reggae music. And that rhythm that I had already felt was reggae, the reggae rhythm, the reggae beat, right? And then, I'm sure you're familiar with EDM, right? Because you're talking about the raves that you go to.
Of course.
But, like dubstep music comes from reggae. And so like there's this thread of music through my life from when I was a little kid that's followed this one, specific flow of rhythm. It's like maybe the rhythm of Patrick's life. Okay, this concludes Patrick's hippie talk. So
dude, by the way, that's the same rhythm. That's basically the same rhythm for me. For me, it was like I've always liked reggae, but for me, it was like early drum and bass in the 90s. And then I sort of backfilled into reggae from that. But then that followed me through to like UK garage, and then that led me to dubstep, and then like future bass, which kind of basically what you're playing at the opening and I was a DJ during that whole time, and so now I'm on an island where it's nothing but reggae, where they listen to nothing but reggae, and my playlist right now is psychedelic dub. Like that's what I'm listening to. That's what I'm feeling. So it's like the question that you have to ask though is, well, why then? Why does this particular beat at this particular beats per minute, why does this resonate with so many people of so many different backgrounds? Like, I mean, the dance hall queen and I think the top reggae sound system are from Japan. So it's like, how does it all click together to where all these people, absent of cultural context, it's hitting something deep enough in them that they want to devote their lives to this beat, right? And then when you see, the shamans of Siberia, their entire practice is based on drum rhythms, doom, 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 driving drums, and they drive themselves into a trance with these drums. And that's not unique. That's across the world, from top to bottom, from north to south. And so it's like, again, this gets back to the placebo effect. That it's like, well, Psychedelics can get you there. Meditation can get you there. The drums can get you there. Binaural beats can get you there. A head injury can get you there. Lucid dreaming can get you there. Well, wait a minute. Maybe there's a lot of vehicles to get you to this place that is actually a place. Like maybe these altered states of consciousness are just waiting to be unlocked. And then what you get from in there, that's everything. I mean, the ayahuasca shamans, dude. So it's very difficult to cook this brew. It's got to be exact. And it's actually got to be 2 different types of plants. So if you just try to cook up ayahuasca, you'll get nothing because your body will basically it'll just ingest it and digest it and nothing will happen. So it's actually not the ayahuasca, but it's the other. So chacruna is usually what they use. It's like a shrub. And it's so what it actually is it's DMT in this particular plant in an alkaloid and then an MAO inhibitor. And so you have to do both of them together. And so when anthropologists have asked these Shipibo shamans or Konibo shamans, they're like, well, this is crazy. You've got this process. You're like Stone Age. It's from like the Stone Age where you're cooking up these 2 very specific and weird plants. Like look up an ayahuasca vine. It's weird. The fact that anybody would think, well, I'm going to chop this vine up and then I'm going to cook it for like 4 hours. And then at a certain time, I'm going to stick in the chacruna and I'm going to do all of this at a specific heat. How did you learn this? The anthropologist asked. And the shamans say, ayahuasca taught us. And you think, well, that's very strange. Like, how is that possible? Because you have to cook it in order for, but no. Just the same way that beat spoke to you in a dream. Like, there's more there. So in the dreams of the shaman, they were told, do this. And then somehow there's a brew. But it's because they're living in the dream world. That our ancestors lived in a dream world. They had to because the information, they didn't have, oh, how do I plant a garden? Wasn't there. There's no Wikipedia. There's no YouTube tutorial video. It doesn't work that way. Everything that they came up with, everything that our ancestors figured out, they figured it out. They thought and thought and thought. And then sometime in the early morning before they woke up, they had a dream about it. They had a dream. And then they went out and they did it. And this is in every tradition. Every tradition says that this is where it comes from because that's when we enter into this place. And so this is what I say is that sounds woo-woo, except for the fact that it doesn't because you yourself, a materialist, skeptic person, has experienced the exact things that I'm just talking about. And so all I'm saying is that, like, give the space for that. Give the space for the mystery. And then it's like, once you give that space, but be skeptical and always have to have an experience like you've had. If somebody starts talking to you, you know who's for real. Because if they start talking to you and they can't tell you, hey, this thing, and you're like, oh, I had that experience. Oh, this thing. And you're like, oh, hey, I had that experience. If they can't tell you that, it's woo. But if they can tell you that, then it's like, wait, what are we talking about right now? I don't even understand that well enough right now.
So many times in my life when I took a stance without experience and tried to declare that other people were wrong on something like this, it seems like within 6 months something comes along, the same thing happens to me, and I'm like, holy shit, I need to judge other people a whole lot less. And that's been a reoccurrent theme over my life. And so I've just kind of learned to do like you're saying. I make space for other people. Oh, so you've taken these substances and you've had these experiences. Makes no fucking sense to me. But hey, that's awesome. You know, I'm happy that it helped you. And that is something that anarchy has taught me. Like coming away from Republican and libertarian, then, you know, moving up the spectrum just to it is an experience in giving other people space to be completely fucking different from you, and to not only just like be okay with that, but to sort of like love that. Start to love the different weird varieties of humans that exist, you know, people that are so different from ourselves. That's been my thing for like, it's been like a 3-year process. The last 3 years of my life, I've just been having this love just start popping up in me when I meet somebody that previously I would have been like, okay, you're just weird. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Like I'm starting to be like, wow, this is an ayahuasca taking, kratom loving person that meditates. Wow, that's incredibly strange, and I love it. Like, do your thing, man. I want you to live your life as happy and as full as you possibly can. I want you to do, not only do you, but I want you to be you, and I'm going to love that you're doing that. Like, that's been my past 3 years.
The free market of ideas, I think, so my anarchism is really, it's a free market anarchism, right? So I think that the real problem with the state is its involvement in the market. But I don't just mean the physical market of goods. As we're seeing, I also mean the market of ideas. And so, and the whole, it's a private company, bro, so they're censoring ideas, and they're censoring popular ideas. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, it's a private company, but you're not thinking about the entire market here. Like, you're not thinking about what do you prefer and what do you like. And so the free market of ideas, why it's important, is that it's the only way that we can separate the wheat from the chaff. The only way that we can know what is actually a good idea is we have to put it in the battle royal with all of the ideas that are either opposed to it, a variation of it, whatever it is, and then we got to see which one wins. We got to see which one delivers the most results. And I mean, we could see this in just a very materialist way as you look at like fitness YouTube, right? Fitness YouTube or boxing YouTube or martial arts YouTube or whatever. And it's like, follow this person, follow this person, follow this person. You're going to very quickly see which one of these is delivering the results that they say and which one of them is full of shit. But if there is a state dogma or there is a appropriate politically, this is the real problem with the political correctness, because it's like, if only those things that are politically correct are allowed, then we don't, because who are we to judge an idea before it's actually played itself out? We need to play itself out. I mean, look, that there would not be slavery, chattel slavery, was a politically incorrect idea. It had existed forever. Slavery's in the Bible. Slavery's in the Bible. So it's politically incorrect to say that some people wouldn't be slaves, right? And so it's like, we have to allow the free market of ideas more important than anything. And I think that what you're expressing is you're expressing a joy of what you're really being given in or what you're giving to yourself is you're giving to yourself the variety. Like, you're moving from out of like the corner Quickie Mart, convenience store, and you're moving into the biggest mall in the world of any idea that you want, the smorgasbord, right? Where you're like, wait, you're telling me I can just, and you're not being forced. You're not being forced into any of these. It's just like, what is this? What do you got? Oh, cool. Sample. Let me get a sample. Okay, that's good. And then you're walking down the aisle, and you're sampling, and you're like,
microdosing for depression?
Probably wouldn't try this again.
Yeah. And you know what? You know what is interesting about this side of the unexplored reality for me that I haven't seen, I haven't experienced this stuff. Everybody, even years and years ago when I was highly judgmental of it all and probably came off like a dick about it, they were never harsh to me about it. They were never judgmental back about it. And no one that's into this sort of psychedelics and stuff, they were always just like, well, hey, if it's not for you, awesome. That's totally fine. And that, I think, is the thing I'm learning the most from that realm of things, is to just embrace other people that are different. And like you said, enjoy the buffet. I love this conversation, and I want it to go on forever, but I'm keeping an eye on the clock because I want to get to your books. I want to get to Render unto Caesar. And we had a great question that loops back to what we were previously talking about. Question from Nick said, are the two alternatives to be a prepper in the mountains or surrender to tyranny? Is it necessarily a futile pushback to stand for freedom, truth, and justice in the big city? And this is a perfect question for you as a guest, I think. You probably have some very direct opinions on it. And I'm and just to frame it, like I'm in that same place. I am again, like I'm in this place that I've never been at before in my life. I am a city boy. I love the city. I love technology. I love fiber optic internet. I mean, I just I love the busyness. I'm a entrepreneur. I like to be where other entrepreneurs are with a bunch of driven people that want to be productive and be successful. That is my element. But here I am in this creeping goddamn tyranny that is just rushing at me faster and faster, and now I'm worried. Now I'm in that place where I was with coronavirus in February. I'm seeing something coming, and I'm like, okay, is it time to make a change before it's too late? I'm at that moment in my life right now, but I'm looking at the menu of options, and I'm not liking any of them. So I'm trying to figure out what to do. Like, I'm a sailor. I love sailboats. I'm thinking, like, one option is to buy a big sailboat and just go and live on the ocean if I need to. Another option would be to move to Mexico because there's a lot of people in, like, Acapulco area. But there's some downsides to that, too. You have moved to Saipan, and it sounds like reggae music is everywhere. So now that's on my list. So what are your thoughts?
Okay, so I guess there's two pieces of this. It's a very good question, and I think that it's a question that's on a lot of people's minds right now. I think perhaps the question is, so you got to look at the framing of the question first, because it's clear that this person who's asking thinks that those are both bad options. And that's it's interesting to examine that. Why are you saying, well, are the only two options these crappy options? I think this also goes to your point about looking at the menu. And so let's frame it in let's take the looking at the menu metaphor, and let's just like expand that metaphor and just like use that a little more, okay? So The looking at the menu metaphor, what I would say is that there's two different ways of approaching this. It's like, did you choose the restaurant to go to? And how did you choose the restaurant? Because like looking at the menu is to say, well, there's a lot of different menus. And if you go like, okay, so you're like, I don't like Indian food. And then you show up at the Indian restaurant and you pull out the menu and there's like, I don't like anything on this menu, right? But you love Italian food. And you show up at the Italian restaurant and you pull out the menu and you go, oh my God, I can't decide. There's like 5 things on here that are my favorites. I just can't decide, right? And so this is what we have in the question is, we have somebody who has showed up at the restaurant that they don't like the food. And then they're going to go down through the menu and see this sucks. Every option here is shit. Well, the first thing to realize is you get to choose the restaurant. But see, that's going to require some work from you. That's going to require you actually sitting down and thinking, what is my ideal dish? What am I hungry for? Right? And it sounds like you've already started thinking about that, but I think it's got to be more concrete. And again, this is where contemplation comes in. And this is where some of the woo-woo stuff about I want to manifest. I'm going to manifest something. I'm going to do a dream wall, and I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to manifest it. And you know what? Yeah. It's not an altogether woo-woo. It's not an altogether woo-woo practice if you think about this context. Because the context is, no, what you want is you want to say, here are the exact things that I want. This is my ideal. Because what that immediately does is it removes from the list all of the restaurants where you're going to show up and think the menu is crap, right? So it's like it enables you to very quickly say, not this, not this, not this, not this, and narrow it down to 2 or 3 things that meet this. Now, there's always going to be trade-offs. Nothing's going to be perfect, and you're going to have to, in some ways, go with your gut. But the very first thing that you have to do, think outside of the pandemic. And unfortunately, this is a really big problem for libertarians, unfortunately, is because it's basically a reactive movement for the most part, is that instead of saying, I mean, even someplace like the Free State Project, which should not be reactive, is filled with a bunch of reactionaries. Because it's like, no, it shouldn't be, well, we need to eliminate this law, and oh, this guy's bad, and we got to go protest this and all of this. No, you have the opportunity, show up and be like, hey, what is the society that we want? What does it look like? Let's make a vision of that society. Christianity did this. It's the kingdom of God. There's a vision of this is the kingdom of God, and this is what we want. And we're going to move through this and manifest it. So what you need to do is you need to find your own kingdom of God. You need to say, what are all of the things? And then when you have your list of things, you need to go through each list and you need to ask why. Why? Why am I saying this here? What's at the core? Again, it's like do I want the pharmaceutical or do I want the cure? Right? So it's do I want to be sure that I can get my pills, or do I want to not feel the pain of the disease? Because those are two different things. Two completely different things that might require two different actions. And so that's what people need to do at this moment. And so for me, what I will tell you is this. What's interesting about this move to Saipan is we were already planning to come here. So before the coronavirus thing happened, there's a community here, cryptofrontier.org. People can go and check it out. It's kind of a little start of a little crypto free state project almost, right? But at a much smaller scale, which is probably where it needs to be. And honestly, over the last year of being here, I can tell you very little friction. I lived in New Hampshire for a year, a lot of friction in getting the free stuff done. Very little friction here because the people are very much about freedom, very much so. Right?
I had an interview with Alex Ugorgi on Anarchast a while ago, and I think he's actually in Dallas right now. He sent me a message and asked if I wanted to hang out sometime, and I was like, as soon as Anarchapulco's over, we'll hook it up. Yeah, I wanted to talk more about that. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
No, so really, my wife and I were already like, hey, let's get ready to go at the end of 2020. So we had already picked a dish that we wanted. Right? We had already picked a dish. We already had our ideal dish ready. And so many people haven't done that. So this is like if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. So it's like, where would we go that would be the ideal? And so this just pushed up the timeline. That's all it did. It forced my hand to be like, go where you want to go anyway. And what's interesting is I showed up and it was so much better. And even for it was a blessing. But of course it would be. Of course it would be, because I hear about places all the time, and it's not like there's every place that I hear about ticks off enough boxes where I say to my wife, let's go at the end of the year. Let's get our shit together and get ready to go, But this one did. And so this is, again, what people should be looking for. And again, it goes right back to why the practice of contemplation. Why go into this practice? Because that's the time when these thoughts will come in and when you'll be able to build the framework. And then when the opportunity hits, you'll say, that meets it. It's the beat. It's the reggae beat, right? It's like the moments of contemplation is when you hear the beat. And then when the song actually drops or you hear it coming from out of a car, you run after the car. And you say, wait, stop. What is that? What is that? Who is that? What is that? And then they're like, oh, this is dubstep, right? This is DJ Scream, midnight request line. And you're like, that's it. That's the beat. Oh my God. And you're like, yes, this is it. And you found your purpose and you're there, right? And so it's like, that's what these moments of contemplation are, to allow you to hear the beat that's inside of your own head so that you can chase after the car. It isn't a choice between, so you're telling me it's just bluegrass and classical music? Those are my only two. No. It isn't just go be a hermit in the mountains or be in the city. It's like, dude, are you really going to ask me that? I'm in a fucking tropical paradise that has had no COVID, that's damn near a libertarian paradise, where if you're a U.S. citizen, you're exempt from paying the IRS. Yes, if you live here, you're exempt from paying the IRS. There's no cops harassing. No, nothing. There's beaches here. Cost of living is cheap. It's a U.S. territory, so you even get the U.S. You do get the protection of U.S. laws that are good. You get all the good, none of the bad. How dare you ask me, am I a hermit in the mountains? If you, I could turn this around. I mean, if you want to see.
Oh, I do. Hold on, let me take you full screen.
You could have You could have that.
Holy
you know what I mean?
Shit.
Like, is that a hermit in the mountains? Do I look like a hermit in the mountains?
Is
and
that
I
your
guarantee
house?
you, this is my house, and the rent to live here, I guarantee the rent to live here is less than a 1-bedroom apartment in LA. Less than I paid for a 1-bedroom apartment when I was living in LA.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. So, I don't know. Is the choice to be a hermit in the mountains or to tough it out in the city and do no. You just haven't thought about it. And again, you can get here without a passport. You can get here if you got a state ID, not even a driver's license. And then you don't even need a driver's license to drive here because the cops will never pull you over. The people that I know who are locals, I'm like, oh, let me, one of my business partners, I was like, and I was like, hey, let me get your driver's license so that we could put it up for this exchange that we needed to sign our business up for. He's like, oh, dude, it's been expired for like 3 years, right? And he's a local. Why? Because they don't pull you over. So it's like, and it's the U.S. So it's like, so the question is, have you thought about it at all? And the answer is no, you haven't. You haven't, not really. Why? Because you're not waking up at 5:30 in the morning to think. Think. Let it happen. And then this is the practice that eventually will grow into prayer. Because what you'll start to notice is there's more at work in the world, and what you think about and then you're like, ooh, what is that command for me to do something? Where did that come from? Did that come from me? Did that come from, and then you're like, and then you do it, and it's wildly successful, and all of a sudden these things start happening, and you're like, how did that problem just get solved? Like, where did that come from? And then you're like, okay, I get it. Maybe there's not a man in the clouds, but it sure as hell feels like it. And when I behave like there is one, and I just listen, and then I do what I'm told to do, then it works. And that's a metaphor that works. Why question it? Why question it if it's working? Maybe it's a placebo, right? Maybe it's just a placebo, but it cured the disease. So yeah. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. Somebody else asked where you're living. He's living in Saipan. And we have Alex Ugorgi in chat. So Alex, I'll message you as soon as.
Oh, Alex! Hey, Alex.
Yeah. He lives there with you, right? He's just visiting Dallas now, right?
He does. Yeah, he's awesome. Just he went back into the belly of the beast. I don't envy him one bit. Not at all. I don't envy him one bit.
So you said that your talk this year was about proof of work as a spiritual tool to help us get through the dim age. There's so many juicy words in that sentence. I want to break it down. Tell us what the dim age is, because I don't even need you to tell me what it is, because I know, because it's such a perfect adjective for it. But yeah, tell us.
Well, I mean, I think that's it. Fundamentally, what the dim age is it's an illusion, not illusion, but allusion to the dark ages. So my contention is that we are in, and I think everybody can see this, that we have entered into a new age of magic and superstition. So basically a new mystical age. And if you look at, I'm sure your listeners, looking at this coronavirus stuff, I'm sure multiple times, if per week, if not per day, they're like, I don't understand. How are people this superstitious? How have they fallen in? This is crazy, right? Like, how is anybody believing this? And it's the same thing that you would ask if you had gone back into the dark ages.
Yeah.
We've fallen into that time. And the reason why, there's a very causal reason why we've fallen into it. And it's this. It's what we're doing right now. I mean, show this to somebody 300 years ago. And I mean, look at your background. This is magic. Mm-hmm. This is a dude, you're a wizard. And we don't know how any of this shit works. We don't know how any of this works. Mm-hmm. Like, even those of us who are technical and work in these technical fields, we don't know how the world works. It may as well just have been like just conjured up. And yet we use these devices every day. And then, the big conceit, and I see this from a lot of developers who are like, that they'll, or the actually guys, the comic book guys, instead it's like, well, no, there's an actual blah, blah, and it's like, dude, you don't know how any of that shit really works. If I, like Joe Rogan says, if I put you in the middle of the jungle with nothing but just your the clothes on your back. How long before you could send me a text message? Right? This is the truth.
Yeah.
This is the truth. And so it's like, whether we want to say, somebody knows, do they? There was just a story that the Spirit bomber, I believe it's the B-2, the stealth bomber, our own military has to reverse engineer the ones that we have because they've forgotten how to make them. It was just a story in the news.
Wow.
It was just a story in the news. That's a couple generations ago. They've forgotten how to make a bomber that's flying now, so they have to reverse engineer it. Okay, well, it's gonna get worse, okay? It's gonna get a lot worse because we're getting more technology and yet we're getting less technical people. And if you don't see that in the woke movement, I don't know what's going on. If coronavirus and all this crap going on doesn't tell you that what I'm saying is the truth, I don't know what you're thinking. So that's the dim age. And so then it goes to proof of work. So what's the idea there? Well, we have this very interesting thing with Bitcoin, and it's one of the reasons why I think Bitcoin is it's not about it being digital gold and number go up. What's valuable about it is that it's one of the few things that we have that is completely self-contained and has the ability to be a tradition. That is, a single individual can have all of the knowledge necessary, mathematical and all of that, to be able to reconstitute a Bitcoin node. And there are single individuals out there who do that. There are lots of node implementations that are there. So it could be self-contained as a tradition, the cryptography and the whole thing. But also at its core is proof of work. And so proof of work is a mechanism whereby we can get a first principle of truth. And it's actually a first principle of truth that's fundamentally based on work, on labor, but it's that some amount of calculation was done in order for you to produce this result. So we give you these inputs, you add a little bit to it, and then we give it to you, and you give us back the proof of work. And so we can start out. It allows us to begin from a place of, let's build our economy from a place of truth that we can all agree upon, regardless of our culture, regardless of the state, that there's no way to forge it, there's no way to counterfeit this. This is the rules of mathematics that govern the universe. And it was in starting to think about this after I finished my last book, Self-Ownership, in 2017, that the parable, the story in the Gospels, the render unto Caesar story, where they're trying to catch Jesus up, to catch him. Should we pay taxes or not? Probably all your listeners are like, I relate to this one. They're trying to catch him up, to lock him up. Is he going to say that you shouldn't pay taxes to Caesar? Can we lock him up for that one? And he says, well, should you pay taxes? And he says, well, show me a penny. Now, whose name and picture is on this? And they're like, well, Caesar's. He says, well, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and render unto God that which is God's. And it says in two of the Gospels, it says they went away amazed. They heard what he said, and they went away like confused and amazed. And if you think about the prophecy that's in there, is that it's like, well, what would be the money or the currency that would be? So there's a lot of different interpretations, but when you add Bitcoin into the mix, it becomes more concrete to where you're like, oh, how could I render that to Caesar? Like, how could I render this thing that's based on math and proof of work and is really like the face of God? Like, how could they have any authority? I understand if it's the greenback that actually has the pictures of the founding fathers on it. Like, there's actually U.S. presidents on there. I mean, it's actually signed by the Secretary of the Treasury. The fact that he would want that back will render unto Caesar, right? Whose face and name is on this? Well, Caesar's. Render unto Caesar. But whose name and face is on Bitcoin? Like, it's math. And if that's not the face of God, I don't know what is. So, render unto God that which is God's. And I think that there's a powerful and deep place where the Christian tradition, the libertarian tradition, the cypherpunk tradition, right? The free software tradition, where they come onto each other and say, we're all pushing at the same thing. This is ours. This is our weapon. And it's not just a weapon, technologically a weapon. And the cryptography involved was actually considered weaponry, considered munitions. People should look up the history of PGP, the email encryption. The inventor, Phil Zimmerman, was under investigation for munitions export because he had the same type of public key cryptography that's used in Bitcoin. He was using it to encrypt software, and MIT stepped in, and it was a big free speech issue and the beginning of the free software movement and all of that. And so it's not just a weapon in that regard, it's a spiritual weapon as well. So yeah, man, this is a potentially something that's so big, and a lot of it is lost. I've been trying to spread this message and to make people aware, and that's a lot of what my book is about. It's been a lot of what my thinking and my research and my work has been over the last year. It's what my professional work in Bitcoin is about. It's what I'm teaching in Bitcoin Mystery School. This is the information that I'm trying to pass on, and yeah, it is so much more than number go up. It is so much more than digital gold. In many ways, those memes are antithetical and are limiting to what this can actually be when we take it to this deep mystical level where it can combine and it speaks to where it's like Christ is talking about Bitcoin in the Gospels. And it's not that he's talking about Bitcoin. Right? It's not that he's talking about Bitcoin. He's talking about a principle. And Bitcoin fits into the pattern of that principle. It gives us something that we can embody and live with a morality that extends thousands of years into the past, where we can say, no, on that form, at the top of the IRS form, when it says, did you receive, now the top, you notice it's the top question. People should pay attention to that. It's not for no reason. When you go and if you do your taxes this year, when you go and you look, the first question is about cryptocurrency, virtual currencies. Did you receive an interest in, send, sell, buy, and have any interaction with them? Why is it the first one? Even though most people are going to just check no, why is it the first one? They're already trying to set us out. They're already trying to set us aside. They already understand what it is. They understand what it is way better than you do. They've been playing this game way longer than you have. Way longer. They know what this is. They're the same people who came and Caesar answered and said, render unto Caesar. It's an unbroken line of the state and religion combined, organized religion, right? And the corrupt level of it combined in an unholy alliance. And this is a fight against it. This is a fight
combined
against
with money. It seems like that's the three legs of the table: is the government, the institutionalized religion, and the currency. Yep, for sure. Okay, guys, last call for questions.
And Bitcoin is not money. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to let people know we're going to wrap up here shortly. So last call for questions. I have been recording your questions. We'll get to them here in a second, but I just wanted to give you last call because we're going to wrap up soon. So Render Unto Caesar, what's the book about? What's the takeaway? What's the teaser?
So the full title is Render Unto Caesar: Prophecy, Prophet, and Proof of Work in the Dim Age. And so it is a lot about that thesis that I have just laid out. So there's the three pieces. There's the prophecy, which is really breaking down sort of what I said, and that we're coming into this new age. We need to start thinking differently. We need to start stepping back into the mystical and pulling the tools that we have gotten out of the material, pulling them into a mystical context. Then there's prophet, where I talk about, I've been saying for a long time that Bitcoin is not money. This upsets a lot of people because they put it into that framework. I think this will help people to better understand fully where I'm coming from. I make the argument from first principles that it's not money in the same, and it is that which should be rendered unto God. It's something new. It basically solves a lot of the problems that money solves, but it's something completely different. In the same way I've said, your Tesla is not a horseless carriage. Although when cars were first created, they called them horseless carriages. It's not just a horseless carriage. Okay, Bitcoin is not digital gold. It's something completely different. It's something that This technology is going to bring an entirely new culture. It has entirely different capabilities. We need to view it in that vein. So that is the profit section. And the proof of work section is really just talking and breaking down and getting into those mystical aspects that I was talking about of how Bitcoin is an analog or a pattern for the types of technologies that we need to be pulling forward as we move into the dim age. And one of the things that I think people will like is that there's 5 little parables that are in there that sort of start off the sections that are just stories to put you into an altered state of consciousness first, to lay out the symbols and put the symbolism into your head. So I hope people enjoyed it. It comes out on March 21st. I don't know, with my last book with self-ownership, I only have ever sold it for cryptocurrency. I don't know if I'll do that this time, but there's a good chance that I will. But it'll be same as the last time. It'll be, you can buy either signed paperback, so I'll sign a paperback and send it to you, or you can buy the digital package, which is like a PDF ebook copy, and also the audio book, which I'm reading myself this time. So, yep, that's March 21st that's coming out.
Awesome. And I think we talked briefly about this maybe a couple months ago when I was trying to get you involved here. I hold a rather controversial in some circles position that Bitcoin is not a valid form of property, and I'm constantly fighting with people. They try and take cryptocurrency and they try and jam it into pre-existing boxes. Oh, it's money. Oh, it's currency. Oh, it's property. Oh, it's this, that, and the other. It's patentable, for God fucking sakes. Like, and I love how you just described that. It's none of those things. It's something entirely new. And we need to learn to think about it as something entirely new. What is it at its most practical, boiled down description? It's a value transfer technology. You have something that people value, and we need to transfer that value between people. That's it. That's what I would say. Do you have any thoughts on that? And then we'll hit a couple questions.
That's exactly what I've said. When people say, "What is Bitcoin?" I say it's a value transfer network. At its core, that's what it is. It's a means, but Bitcoin, the network, is a value transfer network. You're right. It's a value transfer technology, and at every level. So even like if we're talking conceptually, it's a value transfer technology. And I would say that it's also, I love Chris DeRose, who's a great sort of Bitcoin philosopher. People know him. Some people call him a troll, but I think he's one of the most brilliant people who's ever spoken about Bitcoin. He says Bitcoin is a march, and I really, really like that because it goes into the idea of a tradition, that it is a growing and living technology, much like the car. I mean, the tradition of the automobile, right? That we should expect it to change and grow as our understanding of its capabilities changes and grows. Everything that was in the earliest car, all of the capabilities of what automobiles could be, that they are now for instance, with the Tesla, all of that was sort of inside the form, because a Tesla is still the same fundamental machine. It's a car, the same fundamental machine as that first early automobile, right? So it's like the potential was in that little piece of crap, that was just like the little diesel, the old diesel car the guy Diesel actually made. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All of the potential that is in the self-driving Tesla was in that he made. And I think that that's what we should look at in these early days of Bitcoin, is that, like, yes, all of the potential is there, and we have the ability to live inside that tradition. So, like, from Henry Ford to the hot rodders of the 50s to the import kids of the 90s to all of the designers to all of the tuners to everybody that has been involved in the tradition of cars, that's the same thing that Bitcoin can be from a technology, and it can be as impactful, if not more so, than the car has been. It's a participatory technology. It's a march.
Yeah. Okay. Well said. Well said. So I have 3 questions. They're all about Saipan. A lot of people are very interested in what's happening there. So let's go through these, and then we can kind of wrap up. I appreciate your time today, by the way. This has been one of my favorite interviews of all time. So Outlaw Barber asks, question for guest: what is the easiest way to buy land there, in your opinion?
So if you are not someone of Mariana's descent, you cannot buy land here. So this is in the Constitution. They have a covenant with the United States that only people of Marianas descent can buy land. What you can do is there are a few options. So you can get up to a 55-year lease, which can then be, I guess, basically renewed indefinitely. There are people here who will, let's say, stand in. That's kind of what they do. They're people of Marianas Islands descent who will basically kind of stand in. They're trusted, so it's kind of, I don't want to call it a straw man, but they're basically someone who will stand in and hold the title kind of on your behalf. And so that is actually relatively common here. And so somebody coming here, it's a small place. And so you very quickly learn who the trusted individuals are. And if someone was here, I could certainly introduce them to someone. But there is a ton of land here. There's only 55. It's a small island, but there's only 55,000 people here in the entire Commonwealth. Like Tinian, if you want to do some ranching and whatnot, Tinian is an island about the size of Saipan, maybe a little smaller, very flat, unlike Saipan, which is has a hill and not a hill, it's a mountain in the middle. But there's only like less than 2,000 people on that island. So like if you want land, if you want to lease it, basically you could do 55-year lease and then just keep extending it. That's how people do. But you cannot own land here, which is one of the reasons why people probably don't know that it exists. Because if land was available to buy here, none of the local people would own any land anymore. And that's really? Pretty much how they would have sold. Well, they would have sold it a long time ago, right? They would have sold it. It's not a particularly, and especially at the time when the covenant was done in the first in the 40s and then in the 80s again, not a particularly economically sophisticated population. Let's just say that. So, somebody would have came in and offered some money, and they would have just took them. I mean, for most of them, the land that they have, the land that they own, is just covered in jungle. They do nothing with it. So somebody coming along, they're more than happy to lease it to you, and they would be more than happy to sell it to you. And it happened in Hawaii, and so that's why the Hawaiians own nothing. But here they made they were very kind of smart, the local people. They've been here 3,000 years. So, the idea of making a bad deal, they were able to look and see what was done to the Native Americans, you know what I mean? So they were later to the game, and so they put a pretty good covenant in that, no, if you're not of Marianas descent, you can't own land. But there's plenty of people here who've got long leases. And if you want to farm, and you're going to be producing from out of that farm in particular, then, going that lease route is probably not too bad since it's going to be revenue generating anyway.
All right. Blue Birch Fall asks, does Saipan... Oh, he got excited when you were talking about no IRS taxes. Does Saipan shield U.S. citizens from federal cap gains taxes?
Yeah, you don't pay federal capital gains. You pay capital gains here. But what I will say on that regard, and I don't know, maybe it's not appropriate for me to really say that. Yes, you will have to pay. You will have to pay capital gains locally. But I will just say that when you analyze, let's say, enforcement capabilities, you got to understand there's only 55,000 people here. So interpret that as the tax collecting capabilities of this place is probably pretty similar to what the tax collecting capabilities would be of like a small town near you if they decided they were going to try to charge income tax. So just think about it that way.
Interesting. Okay, Avenge Sis asks, how many hours do you dedicate each day to keep informed? How do you process and filter useful information in order to take proper action? And which are your most reliable sources?
It's gotten good for me now. It's gotten pretty good in that. If you go on my Twitter and you'll see that I only follow 33 people. Right, I've got like 16,000 something followers. I only follow 33, and so that in and of itself, and it's all Signal. All of those people are all Signal, and they're all on there for a reason. It's not about, I'm going to mutual follow you because I like you or whatever. It's like, no, this is my account and this is how I'm getting information. And so it's like, I have highly curated it. So now my Twitter feed is, I mean, it's all signal. It's all information. I mean, I know about the things that I want to know about. And I've picked, I've picked and chosen. So like, I've got people on there that I'm following that have next to no followers, but they're people that I know who are like, 20 years younger than me and kind of into a different scene, but think sort of the same way. So I get to see, from that angle. And then people who are doing different things and whatnot. So I'm looking at all of these different things that I like. These people are pretty active. I've found that that's the best way to go because I pull up even alternative news, what were reliable, let's say back 2015, 2016. I don't feel as informed. I feel that those are behind. I think that right now so much, and Trump probably changed this, that like so much of the firsthand information of what's being said by the people that you need to be paying attention to, especially your quote unquote enemies, the people who you need to watch out for, well, they're just going to say it directly on Twitter. You just need to know when they've said it. And so I have curated my feed in such a way that's the case. I amplify that. So I think people who are following me have found me to be a good resource in that regard during this time because I have taken the time to curate my own feed of what comes into me. So I would say that it's in many cases now it's straight from the horse's mouth. I think understanding how to properly use Twitter is there's a good way and there's a bad way. There's a way to have nothing but noise and there's a way to have a lot of signal. And the way to have a lot of signal is to not play the I'm going to follow you so you follow me game and to not even get to a point where you're following thousands of people because then you can't even begin to like reduce your list, of people that you're following. Just only let signal hit you. And then, I'm part of several different Telegram groups. And one of the ways is, I've got a Telegram group, private Telegram group for my Bitcoin Mystery School class. That's good. I've got a private Telegram group for my newsletter, CounterMarkets. So every subscriber to CounterMarkets, which is an agorist newsletter, we've been up for 4 years every month. People really enjoy it. You can check it out, countermarkets.com. One of the biggest things about that is there's a Telegram group. And so it's all like-minded people. They're from all over the place, and they're all people who have at least made the commitment of a subscription. So they are all of that like mind. There's no freeloaders in there, and it's a private group, and there's hundreds of people in there, and the signal to noise ratio is incredibly high. And so I think that these are the things that people can do is like you're looking for signal, find the people who are signal, and then lock into them. And people who are noise, you need to start not even allowing them to come in. I think Facebook is terrible. I haven't used Facebook for years. If you want to be misinformed, spend all day on Facebook. If you want to be misinformed, that's exactly how you become misinformed. Spend time on Facebook. My personal Facebook, I have not used in probably 6 years. Even my Vin Armani page, I stopped using it probably about 4 years ago for that exact reason. So they're there, but you go back and you won't see anything. Instagram, forget about it. All noise. 100% noise. So for me, I'm using social media and I'm staying incredibly informed in that regard. And then I'm using Telegram as well, private Telegram groups. I'm not so big on Discord. I think again it's a lot of noise. It's a lot of like let's kill time. I'm in some Signal groups as well, but those are more professional. So that's how I'm doing it.
All right. Last question. It wants me to ask about Second Amendment in Saipan. How does it differ from other states? Are they gun friendly? Are there gun stores and ranges?
So yeah, that's it. That's actually a really, really interesting question. The politics here regarding guns, because of the historical context, is not good. So the Spanish came and it was guns that allowed them to take over here. So there is definitely, they are not necessarily gun friendly. However, in terms of the gun laws, it's worth looking at. There were two big cases here. Both of the guys I know and hang out with, Paul and Dave, very cool. Dave is a former Army Ranger. But you can go and look on Wikipedia for Commonwealth of Northern Mary Islands gun cases or gun laws. And basically with these two cases, They were able to strike down some laws that were put in that were going to require like these high registration fees and all of that. So it is here. There is a firearms registration. I think Alex can tell you how much it is. I think it's $15. There's a firearms registration license that you're supposed to have. But I guess technically under law, it's constitutional carry. You don't see a lot of guns out and about. But there are guns sold in like the sporting goods stores, but they're not very good. Most people will import their guns, so they'll bring them in. I think there's only, in terms of federally licensed firearm dealers and importers here, I think there's one or two, and the prices are rather expensive. So that's actually something that's kind of missing here if somebody wanted to play that role. But it is, I mean, there are ranges, there are definitely ranges. And Alex is out at the range pretty regularly. There is a small community here that's doing things like building ARs and whatnot. So there's that, but it is not a big gun culture. There is not a lot of call here for a ton of home protection. It's a pretty safe place in that regard. There's not a lot of crime. And I guess if people think, oh, there's going to be an invasion or something, and the government is not particularly oppressive here, not oppressive at all, actually. So yeah, I mean, if you're a gun nut and you want to do it, come out and do it. These guys roll around, they go over to Tinian and they just go out and even not on the range, they just go out and shoot. People have guns. But yeah, it's a Republican run state, Republican governor, the whole nine. So it's like, they're with it, but there is not a gun culture here, certainly from the locals. But again, like from a legal standpoint, you're all good in terms of guns here.
Vin, I've actually been wanting to have this interview with you for a very long time, so I'm absolutely tickled that we did it, and I really hope that we can maybe continue it another day, especially to talk more about some of the hippie stuff that you mentioned. I am going to promise you right now that I'm going to start tomorrow morning. I'm going to commit. I'm going to start thinking every morning. So I'll have to report back and tell you how that goes. I'm looking forward to trying something new. So thank you, sir, for the time today. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you, dude. It was a pleasure, and so great to talk to you. And anytime, if you want to do it again, I'm here for you. But yeah, let me know. Let me know how it goes. You've got all my details. Let me know how your contemplative practice goes. I'm interested in it, and I think it's going to make a big difference for you, man. So it's my honor to have been able to share that if it starts you down this path.
And I hope people following along and watching will maybe make the same commitment and let us know. Report back to me, and I'll probably have to ask you for some tips, actually, man. I'm still not quite sure what the hell I'm going to do, but I'm going to try. I'm going to take the first step, and the first step is how everything gets started, right? So, man, again, I've really enjoyed it. Thanks for coming on. I'm going to go ahead and close out the show and then say goodbye to everybody at Anarchapulco. So if you want to have the last word, go for it.
Oh man, no, it's no last words. Just thank you everybody for coming and checking it out. And yeah, if people want to know more about Saipan, definitely cryptofrontier.org. If people are interested in that, Alex is really responsive, and he'd be happy to talk with you about that. I'd love to see more of you there. But wherever you are, just stay sane. Everybody says stay safe, but what I'm saying is stay sane. So find the way to keep your sanity. Find the way to keep your wits about you. We are all going to make it through this, and view this as an opportunity to find new principles, to find new practices, and you're going to be just fine. You're going to be just fine.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, sir. I will talk to you soon. Have a good one. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to begin by thanking the Anarchapulco crew, the production team, everyone that worked so hard over these past several months. They put the whole thing together in only 3 months, and the event just exploded into this massive decentralized thing with multiple watch parties everywhere. And from what I can tell, looking in from the outside here in Dallas, it was wildly successful. I want to thank Catherine, the head lady that put in all of the work and took all of the stress of the responsibility to make all these things happen. I want to thank the other members of the production team, and I also want to thank phase 2 of this thank you is that I want to thank Jeff Berwick. It is our 1 year anniversary of having been handed the reins to Anarchast. I was extremely intimidated a year ago. I stepped up to the challenge. I took it. I know that the audience that he built around himself and around this channel is definitely a different one than my audience on my other platforms. And like I said earlier in this interview, like I'm at a place where I'm loving people that are different than me, and I'm just really hoping, and I'm seeing from you guys in the audience that you guys are returning sort of that love. I might not be the Jeff Berwick. No one is going to be Jeff Berwick. They can't be. And I knew up front, and I promised myself that I would never attempt to replicate him. I'm only ever going to be myself for you guys. It's been a hell of a year, and I appreciate your support. There's been so many awesome comments and supporters of the channel. I appreciate it. So I want to thank you guys too. With that said, I will mention that if you would like to support the channel, you can check us out at anarchast.com/support, and you can find the support options. A few bucks a month goes a long way to supporting content creators like this. We also have a store. We have all kinds of communication servers. We have a Discord server. We have an encrypted Matrix server where we're building international communities of voluntarists that have all sorts of philosophical debates and play video games together and have a great time. We are building communities. We are building support networks. We are building information sharing networks. And it's all made possible by your participation. So once again, thanks to you. Thanks to Jeff Berwick. Thanks to everyone involved. So this concludes our annual Anarchast and also our last stream for the Anarchapulco event. Thanks to everyone. With that said, peace, love, and anarchy.